Yellowknife Catholic Schools welcomed students back to the classroom yesterday, but things are looking pretty different. The board's Jordan's Principal Funding Agreement expired at the end of last school year, and so it's starting this year with millions of dollars less than last and dozens of lost positions, despite pleas to the territorial government. Tina Showerty is the board chair for Yellowknife Catholic Schools, and she's with me now in studio. Tina, good morning.
Good morning.
So you were last here back in April.
Yep.
And at that time, you weren't sure how many positions you would lose this year because of the ending of Jordan's Principal for your board. And we should just say here that you kind of kept your Jordan's Principal positions a little longer than other people because of an existing agreement that you had.
Yes,
right?
That's correct.
So now you're facing what other boards were facing last year.
That's right.
So what happened between April and now? How many positions did you lose?
So we didn't know last time in April because we didn't know what the funding was going to look like. I call it the bridge funding from the EC&E, the help that they were going to give the territorial government with the loss. So we didn't know how many positions we were going to cut. In the end, we really had to cut around 37 positions. Jordan's Principal funding, we at Yellowknife Catholic Schools really used that funding from the federal government for our Indigenous students, I believe, in the best way possible. We had over 67 positions that we helped support our district and the Indigenous students. So obviously, with the loss of that funding, those positions were going to get cut. Then the territorial government were able to help all of the districts across the territory, what we called inclusive schooling bridge funding, for just the 1 year. And so with that, we hired more inclusive schooling support, and that was about 30. So in the end, we had to cut around 37 positions.
That sounds like a significant number, is it?
Yes, it's definitely a significant number. We received $7.4 million from Jordan's Principal, and so that obviously is a significant amount of funding. We did not get $7.4 million from EC&E, and so unfortunately, the reality was we had to cut.
How much did you get in that inclusive schooling funding?
So out of the $30 million that EC&E gave for this year, we received $4.4 million.
And did you ever hear why it was so much less than what you got from Jordan's Principal?
Well, we all knew, and I think myself as Yellowknife Catholic School Board and the rest of the chairs across the country, we knew that we weren't going to get exactly match for match from what we got from Jordan's Principal. But we don't know, as the chair of Yellowknife Catholic Schools, I'm not sure of the breakdown. So out of the 8 different districts across the territory, how that funding, that $30 million was given, I'm not sure. And I don't know what everyone else was received.
You told our producer that the biggest cuts that you had to make were to classroom assistants. How will this year's classrooms look compared to last year's?
So we've really, really tried. We don't want the people that we don't want this to affect, of course, is our students. We want them to come back happy and healthy and enjoy the classroom. But in reality, it will look a little different. So some of those classrooms that had classrooms assistants, they might have had 2 or 3 support staff in their classes. Those will not be there this year.
And what impact will that have on students in those classrooms?
I think the impact is definitely going to be on the teachers, of course, of that class, because that support's not going to be there as it was previous. But we, again, with that inclusive schooling funding that we've received from EC&E, we're really trying to think outside the box. And we've got some support staff that are going to be going into those classrooms more frequently than, say, before, especially those that relied on those CAs. So they'll see some support staff coming in and helping. And so we're hoping that, those students in those grades aren't going to really see a major significance. But again, the reality is there's going to be a little bit of a change. And
can you remind us what these assistants and support staff were doing in the classrooms?
Yeah. Well, for Jordan's Principal, the funding Jordan's Principal obviously was for our Indigenous students. And that was to help them those students that we had that really needed some more one-on-one time, to help with their learning. They might have had a disability. They might have just needed that more support. So that was there. Jordan's Principle was there for those Indigenous students, which we used heavily in the last many years. I mean, I've been on the school board for 12 years. We've been talking about Jordan's Principle for many years. That was there to support us. So the loss is significant from the federal government. I don't think that can be stressed enough. And so again, looking to EC&E to help, again, help support us with that loss. But also I think the territorial government, I'm assuming they speak to the federal government a lot. They do a lot more than I do. So we need some champions to say, federal government, you might need to step up a bit more if you're not going to allow Jordan's Principle to continue the way it was previously.
Is it your sense that the territorial government was relying on Jordan's Principle to fund things so that it didn't have to?
I believe this is just myself too as Tina Showerty, and maybe not even just the board chair, that I do think there was a reliance on Jordan's Principle. Boards did not have to go and fight for more funding. We were okay. Of course, you always want more funding. Education in the territory, I'm not really sure if it's been funded properly for a few years. And so, but we weren't pushing back to the territorial government because we had Jordan's Principle. And that really did support our students to the best of its ability. And I think the way that Jordan's Principle worked for schools and for our Indigenous students really worked for the territory, the Northwest Territories in general, and I'm all the districts, because again, we weren't the only ones that were affected. But I do think that a little bit, I know as a trustee for this many years, there wasn't many times that we had to advocate as much as we've had to advocate in the last 3 years.
What are you hearing, or are you hearing anything from parents about what's happening with support staff in the classrooms?
We haven't heard as a board too much. I do know that our administration teams have had a lot of talks and a lot of meetings with parents that, of course, are worried. And we're trying to ease those worries and trying to let them know that we're still here to support them as much as humanly possible. But of course, there are parents that, and again, definitely some of our Indigenous parents who really relied on that for their children. And we're just trying to ease those worries as much as possible.
You've touched on this a little bit, but I'm hoping that we can talk about it a little more. I'm wondering what decisions principals and the superintendent are making now about how to use the resources that you do have to try to lessen the impact as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. So again, I always go back to Jordan's Principle funding, is that we had a lot of CAs, so we had to cut those. So our principals are, and I think our principals, our inclusive schooling coordinator, our superintendent are trying to think outside the box. What can we do with inclusive schooling funding that's going to really help our 3 schools? So yes, we hired more classroom assistants, but we also hired, like I said, these support teachers that we might not have had before that will go in, and so the teacher might be, they might help with a lesson that, maybe previously in previous years they might not have done before. But this classroom has this class has 5 kids that have specific needs. All right, so we're going to need to go into that classroom because they're not going to have 2 or 3 classroom assistants. They might have 1, they might have none. So again, it's thinking outside the box that we've ever had to do before, which I do think our principals and our superintendent, and again, our inclusive schooling coordinator has really done a good job.
You mentioned to me before we came on air here that you did have to cut 11 specialty teacher positions. Mm-hmm. Were you able to hire any of those back?
So we hired 3. Specialty teachers could be literacy support, social emotional coaches, that type of thing. We hired 3 of those back. Yeah.
And you did have 11.
We did have 11
before.
Yeah.
We've heard multiple times from the territorial government that they are advocating for restoring Jordan's principal, and it's a priority for them when they go to Ottawa. You've had multiple meetings on this. What's your sense? Do you see the money flowing back to schools?
I would love to sit here and say, oh, yes, I think the federal government's going to, I know I don't. I hope that the territorial government keeps advocating, but I unfortunately do not see the federal government really changing their position. The federal government is very honest in saying Jordan's principal is still around. It didn't go. It's just the mechanism and the way that they're providing the funding is not the same anymore. It's not flowing to the schools. It'll flow to the individuals that need it. So it's not for schools. So again, the federal government is, if schools, if territories and provinces need to fund their schools appropriately and not rely on Jordan's principal.
Have you tried working with parents on applications?
We've done a few. It's very, very difficult. And again, the funding does not come to the schools. So I do know that we've tried to work with, and I don't know the exact number, but I want to say we've tried it for a couple of parents. But, for just a normal average parent, the amount of paperwork is astonishing, and it's probably very overwhelming. And that's what we used to do. We did all of that paperwork. And I mean, and a Jordan's principal application is not a piece of paper saying, could you give me some money? It is a massive amount of work. And I know even as a parent myself, my kids are grown and gone now, adults, but I can't imagine trying to navigate all of that bureaucracy to help my child.
What do you need or want to see from the territorial government?
Well, the big thing is that the inclusive schooling funding that was provided for the year of school year of 26-27, that's a 1-year deal. So we do need that funding to be what we could call core funding for inclusive schooling. It needs to be in the territorial's budget for like continuously. It is really hard as a district to keep on trying to guess what we might get, pray. And as a Catholic school, we do a lot of that, but pray that, the funding will be there for the school year of 27-28. Because as we know, we just started school yesterday and we're already thinking ahead for 27-28. Are we going to have this funding? Can we still have and hire all of these teachers and support staff? What's next year going to look like? So it's just always that game of, are we going to get it? Are they going to be nice to us? And it's that as a trustee and as a board, I've never had to advocate so much with the territorial government for funding as I've had in the last 3 years. It's astonishing to me. And, you've seen as CBC the articles that are coming out about low high school rates, kids having to do grade 10 over, like it's just constant lately in the news. And the reality is money helps. Funding is what was needed in those classrooms. Like you can imagine a class of 32 kids with one teacher. 6 or 8 of those children have significant needs, and there's nobody else to help them. And so more funding, more support, more teachers, more things that we can do, that's what's going to help us. So I really hope that the territorial government realizes and see this, and I hope our Yellowknife MLAs across the territory really fight for our education. And because, I think people understand Yellowknife's a great place. The Northwest Territories is a great place. I've grown up here my whole life. I went through the education system. I turned out pretty good. My kids did as well. So we are a great system. But we always want better because everything starts from the ground. Like if you have a good education system, we've got graduation rates that wouldn't it be great to have a story of how the graduation rates are so high in the territory? That would be lovely instead of what we see in the news today. So I think it's the advocating for the funding and supporting education the way it should be.
Tina, we're going to have to leave it there, but I really thank you for coming in this morning.
Okay, thank you.
That was Tina Showerty. She's the board chair for Yellowknife Catholic Schools. She is with me here in our Yellowknife studio. We are hoping to hear from the N.W.T. Minister of Education, Caitlin Cleveland. We have put in an interview request with her department, but haven't yet heard back.